The Rick we meet at the start of the series is nothing like the Rick we see by the end. When the story begins, he's just a sheriff trying to do the right thing. He believes people deserve second chances. He tries to see the good in everyone, and he genuinely thinks there's always another way. Fast forward years and years later, he's unrecognizable. Rick is forced to make choices that no one should ever have to make. He loses people he loves, watches friends die, and carries the weight of keeping everyone else alive. Every one of those moments changes him a little more until the man we met in Season 1 is almost impossible to recognize. But not every moment changed Rick in the same way. Some made him stronger, some broke him, and one completely changed who he was. So today, we're ranking the biggest events that changed Rick Grimes and how he views the new world. Starting off at number 10, we've got Sophia coming out of Herschel's barn. At this point, Rick had spent days looking for her. He never really let himself believe she was gone because as long as there was even a small chance she was alive, he wasn't going to stop searching. Then the barn doors open and out walks Sophia. Rick's the one who steps forward and puts her down. I don't think this completely changed who Rick was, but it definitely changed the way he looked at the world. It was one of the first times he had to accept that sometimes there isn't a happy ending, no matter how hard you try. This really did take a big hit on Rick's hope for the new world they are living in, and it also made him feel guilty that he had wasted loads of time as Shane was confident that she died way before he found her in the barn, and Rick was delaying moving elsewhere as they were still searching for her. At number 9, I've got Rick killing Dave and Tony in the bar. I think this moment is a lot more important than people give it credit for. Not only are they Rick's first human kills, but it's also one of his first real interactions with complete strangers since the world ended. This was his first impression of how other people act in a world with no laws. At first, the conversation feels pretty normal. They're joking around, having a drink, and for a second it almost feels like things could go back to how they used to be. But then Rick starts getting suspicious of Dave and Tony's true intentions. He realizes these aren't the kind of people he wants anywhere near his group, and instead of waiting to see what happens, he makes the decision as soon as Dave moves. For me, this is where Rick starts understanding that not every threat wears a walker's face. Sometimes the most dangerous people look completely normal until it's too late. From this point on, he's a lot more careful about who he trusts. Number 8 has to be the fight between Rick and the governor. The governor beat Rick to a pulp, leaving him severely injured and unable to protect Carl. He also destroyed the prison, which was meant to be a lifelong safe haven for Rick and his people. The governor sent Rick down a path of survival on the road, which was very different to how he was living prior. The governor wasn't just another enemy. He represented the kind of person Rick could have become if he completely forgot who he once was. Both men had lost people, both had suffered. When the two finally fought, it was the result of everything that had happened between them. The governor had just killed Herschel, a father figure to Rick. Rick was only seeing violence and not thinking straight as he had a fractured wrist at the time. Whilst Rick was fighting to stay alive because he needed to protect his family, Michonne stepped in and saved Rick from getting killed. This was the first time Rick has come so close to death. Laurie's death is one of the moments I think changed Rick more than almost anything else in the series. Up until this point, Rick was already carrying the weight of being a leader, but losing Laurie completely broke him. It wasn't just the fact that he lost his wife, it was how suddenly it happened and the guilt that came with it. Rick wasn't there when she needed him most, and that's something he struggled to live with. What makes this moment so important is that it forced Rick to face a reality he couldn't control. No matter how hard he fought or how many sacrifices he made, he couldn't save everyone. That realization stayed with him for the rest of the series. I also think Laurie's death changed the way Rick led the group. After this, he became more emotionally distant and started questioning his own decisions. We even saw him hallucinating and answering phone calls that weren't real, showing just how deeply her death affected his mental state. Even though Rick eventually recovered, he was never quite the same person again. Losing Laurie didn't just leave him heartbroken, it completely changed the way he viewed leadership, family, and the cost of surviving in a world like this. Rick killing Shane is the moment I think he truly accepted that the old world was gone. Before this, Rick always tried to find another way. He believed people could work through their differences and that there was usually a better solution than violence. But with Shane, there wasn't one. Their friendship had been falling apart for a long time, and it eventually reached a point where only one of them was going to walk away. What makes this moment so significant is that Shane wasn't just Rick's best friend. He was like family. They had been through everything together before the apocalypse, which made Rick's decision even more painful. I also think this was the first time Rick realized that the biggest threat wasn't always the walkers, sometimes it was the people you trusted the most. From that point on, Rick became much more cautious about who he let into his group and much quicker to recognize when someone had become a danger. Even though Rick killed Shane to protect himself and his family, it wasn't a victory. It was a moment that forced him to leave behind the man he used to be and become the leader the apocalypse demanded. I think this is one of the most intense moments in Rick's entire story because everything happened in a matter of minutes. When Joe and the Claimers cornered Rick, Michonne, and Carl, there was no way out. The situation became even worse when Joe threatened Carl, leaving Rick with only one priority, making sure his son survived. Rick's response was brutal, but it ended the main threat immediately. In that moment, it didn't matter how he killed Joe as long as he was no longer a danger to his people. So he did the unthinkable and bit his throat out, just like a walker would. This moment really highlighted how Rick Grimes has changed into a battle-hardened survivor since the world fell. What stands out to me is how much this moment says about Rick's priorities. Every decision he made was focused on keeping Carl, Michonne, and Daryl alive. After it was over, you could see the relief on everyone's faces. They had survived one of the most dangerous encounters they'd faced, and it reinforced just how much they depended on each other. Number 4 is the betrayal at Terminus. I think Terminus changed the way Rick looked at people for the rest of the series. After seeing the signs promising sanctuary, Rick decided it was worth taking the chance as he was still trying to find the rest of the group after what the governor did to the prison. Rick, Carl, and Michonne had been on the road for a while now. The idea of finally finding a safe place was impossible to ignore. Instead, they walked straight into a trap. The people at Terminus pretended to be welcoming only to reveal that they were manipulating survivors for their own benefit. From that moment on, Rick stopped taking people at their word. Trust had to be earned, not given. You can see the impact of that throughout the rest of Season 5. Even when Aaron offered Rick's group a chance to live in Alexandria, Rick immediately questioned his motives. He was suspicious of everything, constantly expecting another betrayal. I think that's what makes Terminus so important. It changed how he approached every new person he met. Even with Judith and Carl needing a stable home, Rick still struggled to believe that somewhere like Alexandria could actually be real. In the end, Terminus taught Rick that appearances could be deceiving, and that lesson stayed with him long after he left its gates behind. At number 3, it has to be Negan's lineup. I don't think any single moment left Rick more defeated than Negan's lineup. Up until then, Rick had built a reputation as someone who could usually find a way through impossible situations. No matter how difficult things became, he always believed there was a way to protect his people. Negan was the first person to completely take that away from him. The lineup forced Rick to watch 2 of his closest allies die, while knowing there was nothing he could do to stop it. Glenn had been with Rick almost from the very beginning. He had saved Rick's life in Atlanta, stood by him through countless battles, and grown into one of the group's most dependable members. Losing someone who had been part of that journey for so long was devastating. As if that wasn't enough, Abraham's death had already dealt a huge blow to the group. He was one of Rick's strongest fighters and someone the others could always rely on. Losing both men in the same night was more than Rick had ever experienced at once. What stands out to me is how completely this changed Rick's approach. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about fighting back. His only concern was making sure nobody else died, even if that meant doing exactly what Negan demanded. You can see that throughout the beginning of Season 7. Rick isn't looking for another fight because he knows he's completely overpowered by Negan, and trying to fight it would just end up with more people he loved dead. Every decision he makes is driven by the responsibility of protecting the people he still has left. Eventually, Rick finds the strength to stand against the Saviors, but the lineup leaves a lasting mark on him. It reminds him that leadership isn't just about making difficult decisions. Sometimes it's about living with losses that can never truly be replaced. I think Rick revealing that everyone was already infected with the wildfire virus is one of the most significant moments in his journey as a leader. Rick had been carrying that secret ever since Dr. Jenner told him at the CDC, but he chose not to tell the group straight away. It wasn't until they lost the farm that he finally revealed the truth. Every single person was already infected, and no matter how they died, they would turn unless the brain was destroyed. What makes this moment so important is the timing. Up until then, there was still a belief that the outbreak might one day be brought under control. Even after everything they had been through, there was hope that a cure could eventually be found and that life could return to something close to normal. Rick's revelation brought that hope to an end. From that point on, the group had to accept that this wasn't a temporary crisis. The virus wasn't something they could escape or wait out. Survival was no longer about holding on until things got better. It was about learning to live in a world that had changed forever. I think that's why this moment deserves to be so high on the list. More than almost any other event, it forced both Rick and the rest of the group to stop looking back at the old world and start facing the reality of the new one. For me, nothing changed Rick Grimes more than Carl's death. From the very beginning of the apocalypse, almost every major decision Rick made came back to one goal: protecting Carl. Whether it meant fighting, decision-making, or risking his life, Rick always believed he was building a future where his son could survive. That's why Carl's death is so significant. After everything Rick had sacrificed, after every battle he had won, and every person he had lost along the way, he still couldn't save the one person he had spent years trying to protect. What makes this moment even more powerful is that Carl's final message didn't encourage more violence. Instead, he asked Rick to build something better. He wanted his father to believe that people could choose cooperation over endless conflict, and that idea became the foundation for many of Rick's decisions going forward. I also think it's easy to underestimate how long this loss stayed with him. Even years later, when he was living in Philadelphia with the CRM, Rick was still carrying the weight of losing Carl. The memories of his son became one of the biggest reasons he struggled to keep going, showing that Carl's death was never something he truly moved on from. More than any other event, Carl's death reshaped Rick's purpose. He was no longer fighting to give his son a future. Instead, he was trying to honor the future Carl believed was still possible. That's why, for me, this is the moment that changed Rick Grimes more than any other.